Hello and welcome to the Joy Curator podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Evans, and I am so delighted to have you here today. We are digging into a deep topic today that I'm hoping will also be fun and not scary. We are continuing our series on the joy of getting organized, and today we are chatting all about cleaning up our communication. Oh, isn't communication such a buzzword? You hear it and it almost feels like triggering. Communication has been something that I have loved researching, talking about, learning about, and I get to talk to so many people and listen to so many people every single day in my job, my career, and right here on the podcast, that I felt it was due time to have an episode all about communication. Now, there are a million and one ways that this conversation could go, but I think the purpose of the cleaning up our communication that I think is going to tie so beautifully into this whole series that we've been talking about in regards to the joy of getting organized is how communication can simplify our lives. And we all can give examples and experiences of when communication has maybe gone sideways, or we've had a misunderstanding with somebody, or somebody said something and we got our back up, or our feelings hurt, and that maybe wasn't what they even meant. And maybe we've been misunderstood, where we were talking to somebody and what we said to them was misunderstood. How does this happen? And how do we fix this? And I know that this is a conversation for the ages that's going to be keeping on happening, but I have read and read and read and read so many books. And a lot of the Brene Brown books that I have read have been life-changing for me in learning how I myself communicate, how I can communicate more effectively to my team, to my kids, to friends, to anybody that crosses my path, and how I can be a better listener, how I can say things in a way that are easier to understand, and everything in between. So I'm ready to dive in on this. And I hope that whether you are sitting at your desk or driving in your car or going for a walk or wherever you are listening from, that you will be able to let these tidbits, this conversation today, be something that you can reflect back on when you are having your next conversation with somebody, big or small. Now, I wanted to start at the beginning of how important it is for us to understand how we communicate. This was something that I have always, I guess, known, but not something that I really paid a lot of attention to for myself. And it's really only been in the last few years that I've really dove into this and understood more how, when we simplify our communication, how when we are more honest with each other in our communication, often the opposite has the ability to happen than what we sometimes think. Don't you find you sometimes immediately make up stories in your head about something when you've had a conversation with somebody, or maybe your kid says something, or a client says something, or a work colleague, and it just kind of gets your back up, and your back is up, and you immediately start telling yourself stories in your head about how either you feel awful, or they must be an awful person, or how dare they say that to me, or how could they possibly think that about me? Our minds go a million miles an hour. One of the things that has been the greatest gift that I have learned in the reading and just personal and business development that I've done has been to stop listening to these stories that are going through my head. And instead of acting on them, to just lean into them. And I want you guys to really think about that. Let this be something that you are able to bring into your day-to-day life today as you are hearing this. It has been so game-changing for me to be able to press pause. And I have gone through a long part of my life being an overreactor, we'll call it. Is that a nice way to, to put it? I have really been very self-conscious about the fact that I knew I was an overreactor for many, many years and wasn't actually putting the practice into learning how to not be an overreactor, because I thought that that was just how I was and how I was wired. And that was just how I respond. And that's how I get lots done. And it was very humbling and very eye-opening to learn how I had been wrongly communicating with people that I care about, and never out of the intention of meaning to, but realizing that I was hurting feelings and I was not always giving others the opportunity to be heard. And this is something that I continue to work on, and something that I have felt so proud about the way that I've been able to really come into my own on how I can be a better communicator. Now, all of us get triggered. All of us have different things, and our trigger points are different. Our triggers are different. The things that come up and irritate us and frustrate us and just feel really good even are all different for everyone. And I think that's another thing that is so important to know about yourself, is to just take time on any given day or week and just notice when something is coming up for you. Maybe you received an email from somebody and the way it was worded, it just got your back up. Or maybe your neighbor came out and said something to you and you just didn't feel good about it. Or maybe your kid said something and it was meant to be a joke, but you took it really personal and are now feeling kind of offended by something that was said. All of these things are okay. I think we often think that if we don't react right away in the moment, that we're either just letting people walk all over us, or we're not actually standing up for ourselves, or sometimes that we just deserve what communication is coming at us. And I think the important piece of this is that there are no wrong conversations to be having here. There is just reactions that are often the place that get us into trouble. And that is something that we have the ability to do better and to make better and to actually work on and habitually change the way that we show up in conversations and in situations, how we respond, how we react. And I would go as far to say that 99.9% of the time, a conversation that we are having is not an emergency. And we can actually just press pause, even walk away and come back to it if the situation presents itself. But we don't have to get caught up in other people's feelings or the way they communicate to us. I'm going to say that again. We don't have to get caught up in other people's feelings or thoughts or emotions. That's for them, and we have our own. And that is so much easier said than done. But when you are in a situation that feels uncomfortable, let's lean into it instead of reacting and just spouting off the first thing that comes out of our minds, thinking that that is somehow going to make it better. Because I don't know about you, but every single time I fall into that trap and I do that, It does not make the situation better. It makes it worse. And then not only am I carrying the fact that there's a situation there, but also carrying the fact that I reacted poorly to it, making myself feel even worse about a situation. And it is a very, very empowering feeling to have a conversation with someone and feel like you are showing up in a genuine, authentic way. You are pausing and just letting a conversation happen before we react to something, and being so generous with somebody else's thoughts and feelings as they share vulnerably with you, and you get a chance to just listen and decide what type of response is required. And it doesn't have to be in the snap of a finger. And I think that that has been the biggest thing that has helped me feel like I am able to have more open and honest conversations with anybody who shows up in my realm of somebody that I need to have a conversation with, is that I know how good it feels when I am talking to somebody and they are asking thoughtful questions. It feels like they're really listening. It feels like there isn't anything that I could say that would offend them, because they are in a vulnerable conversation space with me. And even if I'm saying something that might feel uncomfortable, we can just lean into that uncomfortableness together and talk about it. And I think probably the biggest examples that come up would probably definitely be with a significant other, your partner, your spouse. There is a million reasons why things can get miscommunicated in the relationships that are closest to us. And I think with our kids, we have such a huge opportunity to teach them through our reactions and responses how to clearly communicate in a healthy, genuine, honest way, rather than just talking to our kids about healthy communication. We get to show them. And that was something that I feel like I missed the mark on for so many years. I grew up as a young child where it really wasn't until I was an adult that I realized that honest conversations and communication were something that actually had to be worked on. It was an actual habit, and it was something that you could put work into, and you could make your communication style better because you were learning about yourself. You were growing as a person. You were being empathetic and compassionate and mindful of people around you, rather than having just your own agenda at play in any given conversation. And that is a pretty big thought, if we really think about that, to say, how am I putting the other person in this conversation? How am I putting their needs and their wants and what they're asking for? How am I taking that all in? And how am I doing that for myself? Now, as a continually recovering people pleaser, I have had to go down a lot of really, really hard roads of really uncomfortable conversations that have often only penalized myself. I have spent so much time and energy throughout my life and in my career having conversations with people where I wasn't saying what I needed or asking for what I wanted in a conversation, because I wanted to keep the peace. I wanted to people please. I wanted them to know that I was showing care for them by being agreeable, by saying yes to everything that was being asked of me, and that it was okay that I was just pushing down my own thoughts, feelings, needs, wants in a conversation, because that is what I thought was normal, quote unquote, normal. And it has taken a lot of therapy, a lot of personal development, and a lot of conversations with my people, and to get myself to a place of realizing that that isn't normal for me anymore. That is not what I want my normal to be. And each of us has the opportunity to do the work, to look inside ourselves, and to decide in every single moment of every single day how we want to show up. And this is where the importance of taking care of ourselves, self-care, making sure that we are getting enough sleep, eating well, moving our bodies, doing things that are fun, connecting with the people that fill up our bucket. These are the ways that we get to bring up our self-care bucket and fill it all the way up, so that when we are in a moment of a beautiful conversation, we get to show up exactly as we are. And when we are in the middle of a very hard conversation, we get to show up exactly as we are. And this is not about perfection. This is not about always saying the right thing and always keeping our cool and always making sure that we don't say the wrong thing. That is not what we are saying today. We are talking about pausing before reacting and really understanding what the stories are that we are telling ourselves in our head when our thoughts take over and our emotions are running high, and the thoughts running through our head are telling us really negative things about ourselves, telling us really negative things about the other person or persons that we're having conversation with. That is what we are listening to. And I think so often we're moving at such fast paces in our day-to-day life that I've been so guilty of this, that I jump to conclusions. I jump to conclusions in a conversation. Maybe I'm having a bad day and I assume that the person talking to me has it out for me. They are definitely out to get me, and they couldn't possibly have my best interest in mind. And they're only saying this because they think I'm a horrible person and they don't like me. And you know how the story goes. We go on and on in our heads, often even ruminating about these things and just letting our thoughts get away from us on something that we don't even always know the truth to. And I think the point of this all is that clear communication requires honesty, and it requires truth telling, and it involves you to be the truth teller, because we don't get to control how other people show up. All of us get to show up in each our own way. But I know for myself that when I am in a conversation with somebody who is a truth teller and they are being honest, even if it may not be things that I necessarily want to hear, things that are hard to hear, it makes me feel safe. It makes me know that the person that I'm talking to cares about me, and that they want what's best for me, and that they care about me enough to have the honest conversations, and that they're not just saying what I want to hear. That to me feels like true, honest communication. And as we walk through these steps in Brene Brown's book, Rising Strong, she goes through the steps of recognizing what your thoughts and emotions are as you enter in, even to the smallest of conversations. Maybe you had a misunderstanding with your partner. Maybe you had a disagreement at work about the direction that a certain project was supposed to go. Maybe you and a friend were supposed to meet up and do something, and plans fell apart and there just wasn't clear communication around it. And now you're wondering if she's mad at you. All of these little things have the ability to truly change the trajectory of a relationship for the good or for the bad. These little micro, minuscule details that aren't communicated can sometimes be the difference in feeling like a relationship is just flying off the rails, or it's feeling really wonderful. Isn't it crazy how just the smallest even differences in a tone somebody uses, or the words that they use to say something, or Even how long a pause somebody gives to something can completely change how we receive certain information, and it gives our minds time to jump to conclusions sometimes. And that for myself is something that I'm continuously thinking about when I'm jumping into conversations. And my favorite kind of conversations are the ones now where my brain doesn't have to do all of this thinking. That's how I know I'm in a safe conversation with somebody, when I don't overthink my sort of running dialogue going on in my head as I'm having a conversation. And I didn't actually even realize that this was something that I did before. I thought that everybody did that, and that was a regular part of conversation. And I'm realizing that when I am in my safest places, that stops happening for me. And so what I have started to do is to create conversations with others in a way that I would love them to have conversations with me, and just see how it goes, and ask the questions, and ask myself, what is the story I'm telling myself in my head right now with this particular conversation? Why is my heart beating out of my chest? Why am I assuming that this person is upset with me? Have they said they are upset with me? Have they given me body language or indication that they're upset with me? Why am I telling myself that this is the truth? And when I feel that, instead of letting my thoughts run wild and go to the dark corners of my mind that tell myself I'm not worthy, that tell myself I'm unlovable, that tell myself that I don't deserve to be where I'm at in my life, or that you should be further ahead, or all of the things that come up for all of us, these insecurities that surface when we least expect it. When my mind goes to that place, I have started pausing and thinking to myself. Sometimes this is happening alone. You may see me on my walks that I go for every day, talking to myself, because I'm processing and I'm thinking about what's going on in my life, because I sometimes need to do the process on my own, especially in really hard conversations, so that when the time comes to have the conversation, I can really show up in a way that feels genuine, and that I've processed the stories I'm telling myself before going into it. And friends, I can assure you that if you press pause, and if you take the time to ask yourself what stories you're telling yourself, and ask the person who you're talking to, hey, this is what's going through my head right now as you say this. And I'm just curious, is this what you're meaning? Because my mind is telling me right now that you are upset with me about something that I have done, and I really want to know what that is, because I didn't know that I had done something to potentially offend you. Is that where you're heading with this conversation? And let's just put it out there. I have had so many beautiful conversations with women in the last while, some really hard, and some that we are able to talk about the hard things, but in an easy way. And being able to just say, hey, this is what's coming up for me right now. The way that you just said that made me think that maybe I have done something to offend you in the past, and now this is coming back. Is that what's happening here? And when you are talking to a person who is also doing this work and who is also trying to show up in the best way possible, their reaction to you is going to come from a place of kindness. That is how you know you were in the presence of somebody who is a safe person, and who is doing the work, and who genuinely has your best interests at heart. If the conversation turns into an angry, throwing out insults, throwing out things that are hurtful and unkind and not building you up, that is not a safe conversation, and that is not okay. And all of us find ourselves in these conversations. We all do. We are human, and our emotions get the best of us most of the time, because our thoughts and our emotions are not telling ourselves the same story. Our thoughts are not our inner truth. Our thoughts are just our thoughts. They are telling us crazy lies all of the time. Sometimes they're telling us truths, but it's our instinct that we're listening to in order for us to know what's true and what's not. And when we just let our thoughts get away on us and we start listening to all of the things that are going on, it's a scary thought. We were watching a throwback the other day to the old movie. I can't even remember from when, I think like early 2000s, maybe even late 90s, of What Women Want. You know, Helen Hunt and Mel Gibson can hear the women's thoughts. He somehow gets electrocuted and can hear their thoughts. Isn't that a scary thought? Can you imagine if the role of your thoughts was playing out loud audibly in any given day? Just think about that for a second, because I think it's a really powerful exercise to think of, because if our thoughts are rolling aloud all day, are there thoughts that we don't want other people to hear? Are there thoughts that we're scared to share with others? Are there thoughts that are top secret that we don't want anybody to ever know but ourselves? Are there thoughts going through our head that are really amazing and good that we should be sharing with others? Things that we think we shouldn't because maybe it might be embarrassing, but we should, and it could be a game changer for somebody else. It goes both ways. But the idea that our thoughts would be rolling out loud, and even the inner dialogue of the way that we talk to ourselves, imagine that being said out loud. Imagine the things that you think to yourself, that you're saying that to your child, or you're saying that to your business partner or your spouse. That's a very, very interesting thought. And I think that the more we are in tune with our own thoughts, the more that we are practicing self-awareness about how we're showing up in conversation and in life and in business and in our workplaces, in our communities, in our schools, in our churches, in our homes. We get a choice. And we've talked about this in a few of our episodes during this series of just, we have a choice. And we get to show up in the way that suits us best, plain and simple. There is no one way to show up, but there is definitely opportunity to improve on how we react and jump to conclusions. And the more we are able to get a handle on feeling our best, getting a handle on the running dialogue that is going through our head, and being able to really process the stories we're telling ourselves, why we're telling ourselves this, who do you maybe need to have a conversation with in order to clear something up? Who do you maybe need to have a conversation with to tell them all of the great things you've been thinking about them, but you actually just haven't said them out loud to somebody? I started a practice years ago because I feel like I've always had a very strong intuition. And I don't know what makes that feel like. Sometimes it's easier to listen to than others, but I've always just had this feeling where I could just really feel the emotions of people that would cross my mind. I could really, when someone's standing in front of me telling me that they're okay, I just feel like I can like look at them and just know whether they're being truthful or not about that based on their body language and how they're looking. And I just feel like that is one of the joys of my life, is being able to connect with others and really feel like when I'm spending time with someone, that is where I am. I'm not in 100 other places. And I started this practice of, when something a thought would cross my mind, or I would just get this sort of like gut instinct about something, and then a person, I would think about them, or I would think about a certain business, or I would think about someone I care about, I would just reach out to them. And that has been one of the most powerful things that I continue to do every single day, if somebody crosses my mind and it just comes to me and I just get this feeling, often I'll say a little prayer and just ask to keep them safe, and that whatever they are going through in this exact moment, that be something that they feel like they can handle and that they can show up for, and that they are not alone and that they are loved. And then I will often follow it up with a text. Hey, you crossed my mind, thinking about you, just wanted to check in and make sure you're okay. 9 times out of 10, I receive a response back that's either blubbering tears or laughy faces of something coincidental that had happened to that person that day as well, in regards to thinking about me, or they're having a really hard time. They aren't sure what to do. They don't know who to talk to about it. They're just feeling a little bit down and just don't have the same kind of energy that they were feeling today. Or something really spectacular happened and they just cannot wait to share it with someone. And I texted the exact time that they were like, something so great happened. Those are the moments. And those are the ways that we get to connect on deeper levels with our friends, with our business partners, with our significant others, with every single human that crosses your path, where they are going to be able to see that you are showing up in an authentic, genuine way, even when you are having a bad day, and even when life is not going the way that we wish it was going. We have opportunities to use the good, the bad, the hard, the tragic, the unthinkable moments to dig into ourselves and really figure out how we are going to show up and how we are going to communicate with others in ways that changes from reactive to responding out of love, responding out of joy, and responding in a way that takes care of yourself. Because your thoughts and your emotions and your feelings matter. Your opinions matter. The things you are doing with your life and your business matter. Every single thing you do matters. And when we show up in a way that takes all of those things and puts it out into the world in a way that feels genuine to ourselves, we attract the people to us that are going to love us and care for us and communicate with us and grow with us in the ways that we need for that season. So my challenge to you today, because I love being able to have actual hands-on things to think about during the week as I go about my days and my weeks learning this right alongside with you. My challenge is that today, as you have a conversation with anyone, or as a thought crosses your mind about something, whether it be good, hard, difficult, just let that thought sit there with you. Pause in a conversation with someone and just soak in what they're saying. And instead of jumping to negative conclusions, ask thoughtful questions. Be curious about why certain thoughts are coming up for you, because we don't have to stay stuck in these cyclical cycles of relationships feeling hard, or communication feeling hard, or business feeling hard. There are going to be a ton of hard moments and a ton of hard days. That's not what I'm saying. But each moment we get the choice to figure out how we are going to show up in a way that still feels genuine to ourselves without needing to overreact, jump to conclusions, and think that there are other circumstances working against us. So I cannot wait to hear how you are pausing, how you are leaning in to these hard conversations. I would love if you would share tidbits about what you are learning and doing over on Instagram, joy.curator.podcast on Instagram, or Kimberly Joy Evans. And let's stay connected on this. Let's keep the lines of communication open as we learn together how to clean up our communication.